Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by Blue Blocks. Blue and green light is destroying our sleep, hormones, and performance, and that's why it's important to wear blue light blocking glasses. But did you know that all blue light glasses aren't created equal? I personally have started wearing Blue Blocks blue light blocking glasses, as they are the only blue light blocking company in the world that create evidence-backed lenses for filtering blue and green light. Their Australian lab-built lens technology is fitted into the most fashionable frames, and they even can make prescription and reading glasses in their optics lab. Whether it's their Sleep Plus glasses that block 100% of blue and green light, their Summer Glow mood booster glasses, or their blue light computer glasses, Blue Blocks has you covered. I wear my Sleep Plus glasses 2 to 3 hours before bed, and my sleep has never been better, and I feel so well rested. The daytime ones are also great at reducing digital eye strain, headaches, and lowering stress. With free and fast worldwide shipping using code SUPERHUMAN at checkout, now is an amazing time to level up your sleep and eye health. Just go to blueblocks.com, that's BLUBLOX.com, and enter code SUPERHUMAN to save 15%. Greetings, Super Friends, and welcome to a very, very special episode of the show, episode 299 of 300, and I have certainly saved some of the absolute best for last. Some of you may have heard through my personal journey and story that a few years ago, I read a book which solved probably my biggest personal problem, and certainly my biggest problem in the area of personal development and growth, and really reinforced for me the idea that you can learn your way out of any problem. You can learn to be the kind of person who no longer has that problem. I'm talking, of course, about love and romance, and finding the person that I'm destined to spend my life with. Many of you will know that it took me 9 long, painful years between relationships to find the woman who is now my wife, and probably by the time you hear this, the mother of my child. And that was an incredible, transformational journey that really solidified what is possible in personal development, what is possible when you apply the things that we've talked about for the last 298 episodes. Fundamentally, you change, your life changes, your outcomes change, your world changes. And so today I'm really, really excited that I've finally had the opportunity to interview Katherine Woodward Thomas. She is a master's in family therapist, a New York Times best-selling author of Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, and, more pertinently to today's episode and my life, Calling in the One, 7 weeks to attract the love of your life. Now, if you're already in a relationship or you think that this is woo-woo, I want to stop you right there. Because in this episode, we go so much deeper than just that. And really, what this episode comes down to is dealing with trauma, which we all have. It's improving and growing through our own psychological hang-ups, which we all have. And it's learning how to have more love and happiness and joy in our lives, which we all want. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm not going to read you the incredible credential reel of Katherine's, or the celebrities that she's worked with, or all the different media outlets that she's been on, because ultimately what's important is the impact that she's had, and the people that she's worked with, and the lives that she has touched. So I want to encourage you all to listen with your ears pricked up for what you can apply in this episode, and there's a lot. And if you are looking to achieve that one last superhuman achievement, as I was, which is rounding out your personal and romantic life and finding love, then this is the absolute best episode for us to end on. So without any further ado, my new super friend, Katherine Woodward Thomas. Katherine Woodward Thomas, welcome to the show. I'm so happy and so honored to have you here.
Oh, Jonathan, it's great to be with you.
This is a very exciting interview for me because, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout the episode, your work has changed my life potentially more than any other author, and I read a lot of self-help books. I met my wife thanks to your book, Calling in the One, and so I'm really excited to unpack the magic of the work that you do.
When I read your email and you shared that with me, I actually got teary-eyed. It was so beautiful.
Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to hear. Katherine, how did you become the person who has helped probably at this point millions of people find their one?
Well, of course, as life would have it, I became this person by completely not being this person. In other words, this was my biggest area of struggle. And I've had a lot of suffering in the area of love. And starting from being born into a situation where my mother was not at all ready to be a mother, and we had a lot of ambivalence about this little crying, needy infant that she was suddenly had in her care. And it was perfect. I mean, they had my mother and father had troubles in love. They had a terrible divorce where hostility lasted for many, many years, and I eventually lost connection with my beloved father, who I adored more than anyone in the world. So loss started for me early, conflict started for me early, ambivalence started for me early, love avoidance, love insecurity, all of that stuff. And of course, all sorts of things that then came from that, which were mostly about toxic dynamics or addiction, love addiction, a lot of trauma, a lot of heartache, and all the time this deep yearning to get married and to have a family, because I certainly didn't have a stable one as I was growing up. So, and as we all do, we somehow get through it and we make meaning of our lives that brings us joy and satisfaction. I got a degree. I had a singing career. I founded a nonprofit where I did meaningful work with people who are disadvantaged. So I was creating things of beauty and merit, but I couldn't get this one last piece together, and I worked on it so hard that I eventually just became a therapist without even meaning to become a therapist. But I went back to graduate school, and I think a lot of those of us who go into the healing professions we go head first into that, right, down that rabbit hole, because we're so committed and so hungry, and we don't want the past and the wounds of the past to swallow up our lives or to define our future. And I was kind of willful like that. In a good way, I just decided that I was going to do whatever it took. And one of the things I realized along the way is that our own healing goes better when we pay forward whatever gains we've had to others. So that was actually how I began working with people. And I started doing that even long before I became a therapist. Whatever kind of golden nugget of growth I had that gave me some relief, I would start teaching it to other people. I'd do a Saturday afternoon workshop. I would write about it in an article for a local paper. I just always was that kind of person, and I think in many ways that was my saving grace. So the learning hasn't stopped, Jonathan. I'm still growing and learning constantly, and I'm still paying forward what I'm learning. So,
and I would wish for you that it never stops and that you continue. I mean, that's a little bit about me. My main business, outside of the podcast, is we teach accelerated learning, and we teach people to be lifelong learners and how to learn the things that they want more effectively. And I think learning is what adds richness to life.
Well, you and I are a match made in heaven then.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's all about development, actually. I think, I'm a psychotherapist now, and I know, most of the folks in my field care very deeply about people, have beautiful motives for becoming therapists, definitely want to help people. And there's an assumption in our field that if we dig around in the past enough and kind of get to the core, the center of those traumas, and grieve those traumas and reclaim the parts of ourselves that split off in those traumas, that somehow the future will then work itself out. But what I've discovered is that while it's very important to do that work of connecting the dots with what's happening now to what was happening then, and to go back and do healing work, that what's actually missing for us, Jonathan, is the development that we would need to have it go well, and to be able to create outside of our patterns. So I kind of left out the juicy part to the question that you asked, because you asked me, how did I become this person? So I'm just a person who does their work. You know, I had the grace of a spiritual awakening when I was 14, which doesn't mean I became enlightened, because I was kind of a messed up kid. But I did have a deep experience where I felt that there was a force and field of life greater than me, that there was a purpose to my life, that I was loved, that my life was here for a purpose. I had that deep conviction, and that became kind of a North Star for me. But when I was in my, it wasn't until I was in my early 40s, actually, that I started to learn about the power of setting intentions. Mm-hmm. And this was because I had a group of friends, and we were all connecting with each other about the things we wanted to create, and holding the high watch with and for each other. So people would speak their intentions. I'm going to double my business in the next 3 months. I'm going to buy my first house. I'm going to go on holiday to Hawaii, those kinds of things. But I, of course, was, heartbroken, because I was 41 at the time and still childless and had never been married. So I had either the craziness or the courage, maybe a little bit of both, to call a friend from this group. And I said, I'm going to be engaged by my 42nd birthday. But what she said in response changed my life. Because she said, Katherine, I'm going to hold that intention with you and for you if you give me permission to hold you accountable for being the woman you would need to be in order for that to happen.
Oh.
And that was the beginning of calling in the one.
That I have goosebumps, actually, because I so often say to people who ask about my experience, I was single for 9 years between relationships, and it had just about lost hope. Honestly speaking. And people ask, what changed? And what really changed was I applied, they say when you're a hammer, every problem is a nail. And I'd always said to people, in every other area of my life, I learn, I apply what I learn, I work hard, and I achieve, whether that's businesses, friendships. And it felt to me at that time that the more I worked at this, the further in the other direction potential mates would run, that it would seem like desperation or whatever it was. And what I realized was I needed to change my entire approach, that this is a place where you apply learning, but the learning is not techniques or conversations or what to say or any of that surface level stuff. The learning is actually to learn to be the kind of person who has that relationship. And once I took away this limiting belief that this is the one area of my life where I need to just let it happen, and changed it to what I know to be true for every other area of my life. If I learn what I need to do to become the kind of person who will have the results, everything changed in a matter of months.
Beautiful. Well, and what my friend's question did is it stopped me, again, as you're saying, from running out to try and find love, to taking 100% responsibility for all of the covert, kind of hidden barriers to love that I'd built within myself.
Yes.
And and I got very serious about, I wasn't, and hey, listen, I was in therapy for years at this point, so I knew my issues backwards and forwards. But I think there's a big difference between knowing that you had a narcissistic parent, and so you're exceptionally accommodating, and you kind of you kind of give yourself away or give away your power to keep the peace. There's one thing to knowing that is a psychological issue and then going back and feeling the grief about the moments you weren't seen. There's a difference between, oh, I just did that 30 minutes ago with the man that I was flirting with, where he asked me something about myself and I completely deflected to him and I became who I thought he would want me to be. And I gave myself away there. And it's the ownership of how I am the one now perpetuating that story and recreating that story, recreating that pattern. So I gave up all of my excuses. I gave up that it had anything to do with, men don't like strong women, or my thighs are too big, or, I'm too old by now, or whatever, craziness was in my head at the time. but basic, or, of course, the one that we all say to each other, I just haven't met the right person. That's a very common one. But all the excuses, all of the reasons, and I just took 110% responsibility for myself as the source of my experiences. And it was a deep shift into this inquiry, like, how am I the source of being single? How does it work for me to be single? What don't I want in relationship? I don't want to lose my freedom. I don't want to be dominated by someone else's wants and needs. Or in relationship, my strategy to get along with people is to give away my power. So the only way to keep my power is to be single. All those kinds of things. And then, of course, what that opens up is, well, how might I be in relationship and keep my power, hold my power, not like a power struggle, but like, an autonomous strength that's the foundation for healthy love. And that's what I meant by development. It initiated all of these new ways that I needed to grow and learn in order to trust myself to let love in.
Wow.
And I started to really notice that I had core beliefs were, when my dad left when I was 10, and I mean, he left the family when I was 2, but he left my life when I was 10. And what I made that mean about me, that I wasn't valuable, that somehow he could just leave, that was my interpretation of what happened. And then how do I show up with potential partners in a way that kind of unenrolls them in me, because I teach them that I'm not a valuable enough person to choose. Yep. And those ways were covert. So I just got very committed, Jonathan. I got really committed not to being with the one on my birthday, but to being who I would need to be in order for that to be so. That's where my focus shifted. And of course, that just unleashed magic, because I who knows if it was going to happen or not happen, but I took it on as though I had said, I'm going to be, win the Olympics. You get up every morning at 4 a.m. and you're out pounding the pavement for 10 miles. You're running your course, so that's how I did it. Just getting my environment in alignment with that future, letting go of relationships that didn't fit into that future, letting go of ways of relating to people that were inconsistent with that future, starting to learn new skills and, just doing everything that I could do. And of course that initiated extraordinary miracles. And within really 2 months before my birthday, I was engaged to this just delicious, lovely, beautiful man who had been in my life years before, but I had messed it up with him. And life, of course, reconnected us in this very magical way that caught our attention. And then I gave birth to our daughter the following year, and we went off to live our happily ever after life together, which, by the way, lasted for about 11 years. And then we got divorced, that's a whole other podcast, because then we created conscious uncoupling out of that. And we're still, excellent friends, and he's an amazing person. I feel beyond grateful for him in my life. And then when I was ready to partner again, I also pulled another rabbit out of a hat in my 60s. I manifest this beautiful man in my life named Michael, and we just moved into our beautiful home together and are building our life together. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. And I think that there's a lot of complexity to love right now that has never really quite been on the planet before. So we could have a deep conversation about that too.
Yeah, it's harder to pick the one when you know you're going to be cloistered with them in a room for weeks on end, right? During a quarantine.
Oh gosh, yeah, there's that little complexity. Although I've heard, it's kind of a make it or break it time for couples right
Yes.
now. And I've heard so many wonderful stories about people getting together, people making a commitment to their relationship because they wanted to quarantine together. I've heard a lot of people getting together during this time. It's very hopeful.
Oh, my marriage is better than ever. We're now going back into quarantine in Israel as we record this. They have to redo this quarantine because leave the politics aside. But and I'm super excited about it because my wife and I just really genuinely enjoy each other's company more than anyone else's, almost to the point of fault. We have to remind ourselves like we should interact with other human beings, and it's a testament to when you do the work. And one of the things that you point out in the book, one of the many, many things that I think are transformational is that the one is probably not going to look like what you've built them up to be in your head. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So how did that play out with you and your wife?
Well, I realized that what I wanted, first off, wouldn't have wanted me and probably wouldn't have suited me either. And in fact, people sell people what they want, but give them what they need. And I needed someone who was much less type A and much more accepting than what I'd realized.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we don't always know what we need. Margaret Mead, is it Margaret Mead or Pearl S. Buck? I have to look. It's actually in Calling in the One, I have all these wonderful quotes. And one of the quotes, and there's either by one of Margaret Mead or Pearl S. Buck, but it's about the best marriages are when both people just organically meet the deepest needs of the other soul. And I think it's very important to look through that lens. What do I really need at the deepest level of my being? I have all these wants. I want this and I want that and I want this. But what do I actually really need? Very important question.
Such a huge question. Now, I want to come back to the book. It's funny because normally I have two rules on the show. One is we don't talk about the book until the end. And number two is I never read the book before so that I can ask beginners questions and not tell the author and the audience about the author's book. So I've broken all my rules for you, Katherine.
Okay. I'm honored. Thank you.
The book is comprised, and I want to share this with people because I want them to understand the experience that I went through and all the folks that I've given the book to who've now invited me to their weddings. It's 49 exercises, an exercise a day, and correct me if it's been a few years, an exercise a day, essentially 7 weeks. And I often tell people it's like 10 years of therapy of, as you said, not just identifying your issues. And some chapters are not going to speak to everyone because you don't carry that issue. But many chapters, you're going to do an exercise or a meditation or a journal entry or whatever the exercise for that day is. And you're going to dig up something mind-blowing. I wanted to say awful, but everyone's pain is their own and beautiful in their own way. But you're going to dig up something that you had no idea that you were carrying. I want to understand, did you become a marriage and family therapist after writing the book, or did many of these exercises come from your professional background?
Most of the exercises came from my own personal path. I actually wrote the book right at the beginning of being licensed. Now, it took 7 years to get the license, so it's not like I wasn't already in practice, but I was in practice as an intern because in LA, which is where I was working, or California, there's a requirement of 3,000 face-to-face hours doing therapy before you can be licensed. So I had been doing that for years. But as I said, Jonathan, I've been on a path since I was 14
Right.
years old. So
Right.
and I was in 12 steps for years because I had an eating disorder. So I was in the OA program and I was in the transformational technologies. I did the landmark work and the
Mm-hmm.
LifeSpring work, and I was in science of mind. I attended Michael Beckwith's church for many years in Los Angeles. So I had been doing a lot of different things.
Right.
I was a meditator. So it's kind of a conglomerate of everything that was really working for me.
And it shows because when I tell people that, this is like 10 years of therapy, the caveat is, but you're actually going to change something as a result of it. It's written, I think a lot of times, there are a wide gamut of psychologists and therapists out there, but a lot of times, many of them have an approach of allowing you to come to this realization, but not holding you, as we talked about before, accountable to actually make the change based on the realization. I think what's so refreshing in Calling in the One is you give people the work and they can't help when you're staring at a drawing of yourself that you have done and you do not like what you see. There is physical evidence kicking around your house, or another one of the great exercises, which I think changed me for good, is just writing on a Post-it note and putting it all around the house. This reminder that I deserve to be loved, which I did not, at my deep, 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 deep core, did not believe. If you'd asked me, I would have said, of course I do, logically.
Yeah.
But intuitively, emotionally, I did not believe. And you can't help but change when you've spent a month of your life walking around seeing this Post-it note 20 times a day. You can't help but acknowledge that you need to rewrite a pattern.
Yeah. And I love that you're identifying beliefs not as a cognitive, conscious thought, but as an emotional cluster in the body that gets kind of triggered by even the smallest things. Somebody doesn't call you back in a timely manner, or their eyes move away from you and scan the room too quickly, or any kind of those things that those of us particularly are sensitive people and rejection sensitive. We pick up on every little thing, but we'll default into that emotional place again. And the danger of doing that is that when we're centered somatically, emotionally in an old story, even though we're still kind of pretending that we're fine, we're feeling insecure, we're feeling self-loathing, we're feeling a sense of shame, or somehow that we're not good enough. What happens is that we start to covertly behave in ways that then communicate that to the other person and enroll them into that story. So a lot of us feel like we can't get beyond the patterns because we have so much relational evidence. And one of the things that we really work with in Calling in the One is seeing ourselves as the source of the evidence. And so shifting our relationship from those old stories to this is really the truth about me, to, oh, this is a story. And actually now how the work has evolved, because the book first came out in 2004, and I've had the honor of working with so many people over the years, is I ask people, is this a traumatized self or is this the true self? And what's really true about you? Where is the true self in your body? And being able to shift centers. Because if we are centered in an old story that we're not lovable, or that we're destined to be alone, or all of these stories that we kind of default to when we get disappointed or hurt, it's very hard to create anything outside of that story, because where we're centered at the level of identity is where we're creating our lives from. So when we're shifting, basically you're talking about the Post-its around, is what it's reminding you is of the true you, who is a man who is worthy of being loved. And Jonathan, there was always a part of you that knew that. And
Absolutely.
Right. So it's just connecting you with that deeper truth. And then the work has grown too. I don't know how much of this you got from the original manuscript. By the way, I just rewrote the whole manuscript.
Oh, wow.
And the new version's coming out next spring.
Oh, wow.
Because
Congratulations.
I hope it's good for everybody. I've been working with so many people for so many years. But, the way that, so I didn't change the program at all, though, for those who want to run out and start working with this program, it's completely sufficient. I just have, more stories that kind of bring home the point or that kind of thing. But the work has been really growing, and it's to really help us to shift our own internal consciousness and align our consciousness with the future that we're committed to creating.
Right. I'm a little bit worried because I feel like there is magic in this process. And I know this because I've given this book away more than almost any book. I think any book at this point. And I've seen the results. I've actually been in an auditorium of 5,000 people and had someone stand up on stage and thank me, which is absurd because I didn't write the book, but thank me for gifting them a copy 2 years ago because, now they're with their one. And I trust you, but I'm a little worried, there's magic there. So
I know. I was worried too writing it because I do know about that magic element. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've had people say, oh, I bought the book, I put it on my bedstand, and within the next few days, I didn't even open it, but within the next few days, 3 former boyfriends called me to apologize and clean up the past. I mean, There is so much magic to the book. But I think that, the magic continues as the work grows. And I, as I said, I didn't really change the core of the program itself. I just updated it to the ways that I've really grown and just tried to clarify things. Yeah, but thank you.
Wonderful. Hey, listen up and don't skip over this. I want to let you know that I am giving away completely free copies of my latest best-selling book, The Only Skill That Matters. This book is going to teach you how to upgrade your memory, read faster, learn more, and conquer your dreams. And it contains all new content written for 2020. Now, again, I am giving away completely free copies of this book. All you need to do is pay shipping and handling. So, to pick up your free copy as a listener of this podcast, visit freelearningbook.com. That's freelearningbook.com. Now, I do want to ask, I always try on the show to give practical homework and takeaways, and I know I'm going to personally encourage each and every single one of you to visit the blog post for this episode because we will link to both of Katherine's books. But I would love if you could share 1 or 2 of your favorite exercises and pieces of homework. I know which ones are my favorites, but I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, I want to hear what your
people
favorites are.
Oh, there's a couple really, really good ones.
Okay, well, can we get to them after I give you mine?
Please, yes.
Okay, good. So the first thing I always tell people to do is start with the future, not the past. And usually what happens when people go to sort through their relationship issues is that you go to the past. You try and understand, you realize I've got to do some work on myself here. And I keep going out with, this type of person, a narcissistic person, or I keep going after unavailable people and getting involved in impossible loves, or I keep finding myself being ghosted or left or not chosen, or maybe I'm always alone and the absence of a pattern is the pattern. So you want to, kind of notice the pattern in this area. And usually what we do is we say, well, what happened with my mother and what happened with my father or my older sibling, or what was that trauma I experienced? And let me go back and work on the past. And I think that, again, it's not either or, but the power of manifestation, the ability to create a miracle, is different than the power to heal your past. And what I mean by that is that in transformation and technologies, we want to start with the future that you're committed to. So what would be the miracle for you? And I really encourage people to really stretch and to imagine that God is having a good day and is dispensing miracles. And what would that miracle look like for you? And to just actually claim that miracle for yourself. So the best I could do is to say, I'm going to be engaged by my 42nd birthday. I didn't even put any, characteristics like he actually has to be a wonderful person. I got very blessed in that way because he happened to be a really wonderful person. But so actually to start to vision, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And to try and stretch, and it will be outside of who you've known yourself to be. When we say it's an identity issue, if you're a person who struggled in love, you most likely have a sense that love is for other people, but not for you, that you are a person who's destined to be alone. That's what we call an identity belief. So in your visioning, you want to set that aside and to the best of your ability, like what might it look like or what might it feel like or taste like or sound like? Maybe you imagine your partner singing in the shower in the next room, or you imagine them bringing you a beautiful fresh bouquet of flowers, and what would those flowers smell like? Or you can hear the sound of your laughter together. So you start stretching yourself to imagine that you're in that experience right now, and to feel as much of the feelings you might feel. You notice who you are in that. I am a person who is loved. I'm someone who feels safe. I'm a person who is of great value. And you really stretch to go into the self of your future. From there, you do what Michael Beckwith inspired me to begin to integrate with Calling in the One. He's a wonderful spiritual teacher out of Los Angeles, dear friend of mine. And by asking two questions, one of which is, what would I need to give up in order to manifest this future? What would I need to give up? And Jonathan, if you just sit with that question, you're going to get answers. I need to give up the hope that my former love is coming back.
Yes.
I need to give up this. I need to give up smoking cigarettes. I need to give up drinking. I need to give up my clutter. We all know what that next step is. And then the next question is, what would I need to begin to grow and cultivate to prepare myself to receive this future and to have it go well when it arrives? And that's going to be, I need to grow my ability to know what I'm feeling, to know what I'm needing, and to be responsible for expressing those to another person. Or I need to grow my ability to tolerate disappointing someone, to stay true to myself, right? Mm-hmm. So there's ways that we need to develop to have that go well. And then I added the final question, and what is my next step?
Yes.
How do I move right into action to make? And that's what you're saying is different than the work we've been doing in the past. Insight only gets us so far. Understanding ourselves is not the same technology as making miracles. So Calling in the One is an action step. And actually there's two practices. There's a practice and there's a bonus, like this is what it looks like to put that into action in your day. So if you notice, one of the days is about the disowned parts of ourselves. So the practice is you were mentioned artwork. We had an art project on that day where you're doing an art project and you're kind of claiming certain parts of yourself and you're putting it on the page and you're owning your power and you're owning your beauty and you're owning your talent. And then the bonus in action is to go out and express some part of you that you have been reluctant to express, that you've been disowning. Go out and actually, be flamboyant in how you're dressed. Get attention to yourself, or brag on yourself with a friend, or, go to a talent show and sing your heart out. I guess we all do that on Zoom right now. But I'm just saying, it's like to start to actually become the self of your future, the part of you that, is free, is loved, is expressed, is seen, is valued. You start to do that now. I mean, there's a joke with people who've been doing Calling in the One for a while now. They say, because it's kind of a way of living, actually, you start to see. So it manifests miracles not just in love, but in any area you stand for in your life. But the joke is that, oh, I get it. Calling in the one is calling in me. It's calling in.
Elaborate.
Well, you become yourself. You give up who you think you're supposed to be for someone else. You stop waiting, living your life. You start putting your life on hold because one day you'll meet that person and then you'll live fully. Or you give
Yes.
up, oh, I'm going to save all my love for that one person. You start loving the people that God has given you to love right now. You start,
Yes.
living your life fully, expressing who you are, cultivating the gifts that you came here to give. You start being yourself fully, because that's really the version of yourself that is going to attract in the right person for you anyway. Like, that's really the process of calling in the one.
I love that. I have a friend who I've given the book to who has not made it through the book, and no judgment there, but who said something in her process of trying to meet someone. I don't want to go to this event another possible event where I could meet people, because it's putting out more energy and more everything. And then if I don't meet that one, then it was all wasted energy and wasted effort. And I thought to myself, one of the turning points for me in my own journey was realizing, exactly as you said, these are the people that the universe has given me to love right now. And I, first off, had a pivot that love, like money, I believe, is an abundant and infinite resource. So it's not that if I expend it, I can't get more of it back. It's actually the converse, similar to in the way that, the Tao Te Ching would say, don't expend too much energy. And some people take that to mean don't overuse your body, when in fact, the more you use your body, the healthier and happier it is. And love is the same way. When I started just loving on everyone that I met, and really deeply not thinking in that scarcity mindset of, well, I better save all my love for when that person comes, but just the best word I can use is exercising it.
It's beautiful.
All of a sudden, I had more to give, and very, very quickly I had someone to give it all to.
Well, and I really love what Michael Singer said in The Untethered Soul. He said that it really resonates as true, that the secret to being happy is an open heart.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I think being open-hearted, being present, being available, and being happy, consequently, is very magnetic to love. Very, very attractive.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we gave some really, really good homework. I did promise you that I would give you some of my favorite exercises.
Yes.
And I'm going to deliberately be cryptic, because I really, really have a problem with people who want to get the result but don't want to do the work. People. I had someone recently say to me, they told me about a problem they're having with parenting. And I said, well, have you read this book? It's actually all about it. And their answer was, no, what are the key points? I was like, no. One of my core values and beliefs is, in order to enjoy the wisdom of the journey, you have to take every step. So I'm going to share some of the exercises that I want people in the audience to point out. These are the ones that deeply impacted me. I'm not going to tell you what to do, because you need to pick up a copy of this book. I'm telling you, whether you're looking for love or looking for more love. One really, really big one for me was letting go of old agreements. And I realized that one instance, when I was very, very young, I had an interaction with my mom where she had jokingly said, I think the situation, I'll explain it because otherwise it's going to be strange for people. I was 4 years old and I wanted to buy flowers and jewelry for a girl in my class that I had a crush on. And my mother immediately realized that this was highly inappropriate for a 4-year-old boy to do, and probably the little girl's mother would not have been super happy about it. So her way of saying that was, well, does that mean that you're not my Valentine anymore? And she made it, well, but no, but you're my Valentine. You were last year, you promised. And my 4-year-old brain engraved that in as any time where I choose someone, I'm abandoning my mother, my parents. And of course, you talk in the book about clearing and how to clear those agreements. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I think in order to find that right person, I need to hear from you that you're ready to not be the most, important woman in my life, that you want that for me. And of course the answer was, of course I do. I've never wanted anything more for you. And da, 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 da. But I needed to hear that, that I wasn't abandoning my responsibility to both of my parents to start a new family. So that was one exercise that deeply impacted me, drawing myself and realizing what I actually, when all the confidence and training in personal speaking was stripped away, what I actually thought of myself was very eye-opening. And again, the Post-it notes was really transformative for me.
Isn't that wonderful? I really appreciate the drawing exercise, if I'm recalling correctly, is where you draw kind of the old insecure story that you will default to on an emotional level, particularly in the face of disappointment, right? And then kind of that emotional cluster in our solar plexus or in our heart. And then just give it a physical form outside of your body, and then to draw a deeper truth, like the beauty of your soul, the worthiness that you fundamentally are to receive love into your life. It's gorgeous. I want to say something about the agreements. Because the old agreements have to do with completing the past. And, the second chapter of Calling in the One, or the second week of the program, is really about this clearing away of the inner obstacles to love, those kind of hidden things that we don't even really think much about. And that's what you're pointing to, this old agreement that you made when you were 4 years old. Mm-hmm. And some people might say, but you were 4. But here's the thing about agreements. When we made those agreements with people, we actually, it was as though we set intentions for what our lives were going to be. It was like you set an intention. I will always love my mother more than any other woman. Mm-hmm. And those intentions actually begin to give shape to our choices and all of our decisions in life. And we will forget the original intention, the original agreement that they came from, and will suddenly, be then one day mysteriously looking at, like, well, why would I have done that? Why would I do that? And I give a lot of examples of this in the book. One of my favorite stories about that is this woman who got married when she was in her mid-20s and to a man that she didn't love. And she was married to him for about 10 years and finally got out of that marriage. But part of leaving the marriage was this confusion, like, why would I marry somebody that I didn't even love? And that was when she discovered that when she was young, she had a stepfather who was quite abusive. And he, at some point, when she was just entering into going through puberty, started to focus on her in a way that was completely creepy and inappropriate. And she got understandably freaked out. And he started to come on to her. And she made a bargain with him. She was a very clever girl. And she said, look, if you leave me alone now, when I am 25, I will marry you. And it worked. Clever girl. It worked because he did leave her alone. He, of course, ended up divorcing the mother. It was such an ugly memory that she had long ago forgotten it. But when a man she didn't love proposed to her at the age of 24, she immediately said yes, and she immediately married him just to avoid the possibility of having to keep that other commitment. But she had long ago forgotten it. This was something she didn't even have a memory of. So it's very important when we're doing Calling in the One to start to really look back and say, what agreements have I made? And a lot of them are not even, these are kind of, that's an overt commitment that she made with someone. You made something inside of you. You made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I get it. I have to love my mother and no one else in order for my
Right.
mother to be okay. Sometimes we make decisions with ourselves. Like, I'll never get hurt like that again. I'm never going to
Right.
open my heart up to anyone like that. Or maybe we made an agreement in a moment of passion with a former love where we said, you are the great love of my life. And we've never undone that. And it's always
Yeah.
in the background. And everybody's a disappointment after that. So it's very important that we go part of cleaning up the past and getting our energies into the present and aligned with the future that we're committed to, that we complete these things. Now, you could call up your mom and have that beautiful conversation, and what a sweetheart she is to have had that conversation with you. Sometimes we can't do that. And that's when we do what I call a soul to soul meditation, where you call in the soul of the person you made an agreement with and you complete the agreement. And you do that by saying, I cannot keep that agreement any longer. It was an agreement that probably, came from wishful thinking or from the part of me that was hopeful that that would happen. But I was young and I didn't understand the implications of it. The new agreement I'm making with you is. And so you made a new agreement without saying it overtly with your mom. You made a new agreement that you got to have a wife who you loved first and foremost and protected first and foremost. And that was where your heart was going. And she, like a good mom, aligned with that. So that was a new agreement that the two of you made in that conversation. So you make a new agreement. Maybe you say, you are no longer the great love of my life. You were a great love,
Mm-hmm.
but now I have room in my heart for another great love, and who is the great love in my life. That's what I'm making room for now. So you have to complete the old and then recreate it to be in alignment with that future you're standing for.
Brilliant. And I love that insight into the experience that I had. Now, Katherine, we've almost run out of time, and I did promise you we would talk about this idea that all of this, I think it's very, very easy for people to look at it as an end game, as a means to an end. You mentioned to me in passing before we got started that this is not an end game. So fill me in a little bit on that.
Well, I think it's important for us all to wake up to some of the core principles that we're teaching in Calling in the One. Things like the past does not determine the future. We do in this moment by what we're standing to create. So this technology of deliberate intentionality, and then the technology of visioning that future as though it's now, so bringing that future into the manifest world through our own consciousness, through how we're showing up. So the ability to recognize that we do have the power to manifest a future that is unlike anything we've ever had before, that we are not limited by what already exists or by the patterns of the past, but really only limited by the courage that we have to vision a different way. And I think that with what we are facing in our world, that it's very critical for us to wake up to how we want to master these principles in our own lives and then bring them into the world and our communities. What are we standing for in our family? What are we standing for in our community, in our country, in our world? And particularly with the severity of the breakdowns that we are all experiencing, it's very important to remember how powerful we all are to manifest miracles. So it's that really is, to me, this is why Calling in the One came into being. Calling in the One is magical. There is an energy to it. And I think it's beautiful to aspire to getting everything that we want in life. But if that's the only thing we ever used the technology for, I think we'd be missing the mark. That would be like staying in kindergarten. And isn't it wonderful we learned how to count?
That is so pertinent right now, as I'd mentioned before we hit record, that I'm trying to call in the one for what my next big business idea is going to be, or next big calling and passion. It's I think this is a perfect ending to 300 episodes of this podcast and calling in what is going to be next.
Yes, and how can I use now what I've learned in Calling in the One to manifest a more beautiful, sustainable world for us all, and how to ensure the future is a happy, healthy one for our grandchildren's grandchildren.
Yes, absolutely. Katherine, we've just about come to the end of our time here. I do want to ask, where should I send people to learn more about you?
Well, I think probably for today's podcast, Calling in the One is a great place because we have a Calling in the One free starter kit. And I'm thrilled to share that with people. And it's basically a teaching. It's a 50-minute video that's a teaching. And then also I have one of the lessons from the new version of the book, which is still the old version. I really did protect that magic, I promise you.
Awesome.
And that would be a great place to start. But I also have KatherineWoodwardThomas.com, and I'm available if anyone wants to just reach out and connect with me. They can go to the contact page on either of those sites, and I. As of now, still get all my own email and do my best to respond to people personally.
Fantastic. And the last question I want to ask you before I let you go, I always ask this question, which is, if people take away one big message from this episode and they carry that message with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
I think that it's to recognize that love really does belong to all of us, that we are relational creatures and we are born to bond, and that we really do need each other to become ourselves fully. I don't think it's a mistake, Jonathan, that your life has taken off in your own visibility and contributions to the world. And it is continuing to unfold in this really big, magnificent, bold way with your family, that we do need each other to become ourselves fully. And so this is an important area to tend to in our lives.
I love that as a closing note. Katherine, I want to thank you not just for your time today and for sharing your wisdom, but I want to thank you for the profound impact that your work has had on my life and so many other lives out there.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.